Founders' isolation doesn't look like being alone. It looks like being constantly surrounded and still completely on your own with the thing that actually keeps you up at night. Most seven-figure founders are still the loneliest person in the room on their own company, and almost nobody says that out loud. I want to talk about something today that doesn't show up on a P&L and it doesn't show up in a strategy session, but it shapes almost every decision my clients make. Is the fact that the longer you run a business, the fewer people you actually have to talk to about it. That sounds backwards. You think that the more successful you get, the more support shows up. More teams, more advisors, more people in the room. But what actually happens is quite the opposite. You get more people who need things from you and fewer people who you can be honest with. I'm sure you've heard the expression, it gets lonely at the top. I'm Nata Salvatori, and this is a podcast for founders who build something real and are still carrying way too much of it alone. Today, we're talking about why that happens and why it gets worse the more successful you get. Why this is not a personality flaw and what actually fixes it, because it is not the thing that most people reach for first. Let's start with what this actually looks like day to day, because I don't think most founders even clock it as loneliness. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like a normal Tuesday. You are back to back in calls all day long. Team Slack is going off. Clients are messaging you. Your calendar is packed solid, but every visible measurement, you are surrounded by people. And then a real decision shows up, the kind that actually matters. And you realize there's nobody in any of those conversations you can hand it to. Your team needs you to have already decided. Your clients need you to be steady. Your spouse or partner is supportive, but they're not in the business with you and they don't know what it actually feels like when a launch underperforms or a key person quits without warning. So the decision sits with you and just you in a calendar that looks completely full. That's the part that gets missed. Founders' isolation doesn't look like being alone. It looks like being constantly surrounded and still completely on your own with the thing that actually keeps you up at night. And here's the part I really want to dig in today. This problem doesn't improve as your business grows. It actually gets worse. And it gets worse in a very specific, predictable way that I wanted to walk you through, because once you see the mechanism, you will stop blaming yourself for it. When you're starting out, you actually have more peers than you think. Other people at the beginning figure it out alongside you, comparing notes, swapping war stories about the same client red flags, the same pricing fears. There's rough equality to it. Nobody's pretending to have it figured out because nobody does. Then you start having real traction, real revenue, a team that depends on your paycheck and decisions, clients who are paying real money and expect you to be the steady one, and something quietly shifts. The peer group that used to feel like peers start to feel one step behind you. Through no fault of their own or no fault of yours, it's just maybe timing. And the people who are actually ahead of you, the ones who could speak to your actual problems, start to feel less accessible, more guarded, harder to reach, honestly. So you end up in this strange middle layer. Too far along to be fully honest with the people behind you, not embedded enough with the people ahead of you to get real, unfiltered truth. So that is not a flaw in your personality. I want to make sure you understand that. That's just what happens structurally as you move up. Nobody warns you about that part. They warn you about cash flow and hiring and long hours, but nobody warns you that the higher you climb, the more selective you have to get about who actually understands your situation, and the smaller that group gets every single year. I want to give you a composite picture here. Not one specific person, but a pattern that I see across a lot of founders I work with, because I think you'll recognize some pieces of it, even if the specifics don't match exactly. There's a version of this founder who's built something real. Strong revenue, small team, clients who love the work, From the outside, this is a success story. On the inside, every hard decision, every should I let this person go, every is this offer actually working or I'm just attached to it, and every am I the problem in my own business right now, all of it gets processed completely alone, late at night, usually after everyone else has logged off. This founder has people around her all day. She's just never quite found anyone who has enough context to actually help with the real stuff. So she stopped bringing the real stuff to anyone, not out of mistrust, just out of exhaustion with the setup required to even get the real conversation. That exhaustion has a mechanism behind it. And I want to give you the actual name for it because I think you can name it. You can stop feeling the problem is you. Think about what it actually costs you right now every time you try to talk through a harder conversation with someone. If it's your team, you have to manage how much you reveal because they need you to seem certain. So you're editing yourself even as if you're trying to think out loud. If it's your partner, you have to back up and explain context that they don't have. The history with clients, why this decision matters more than it looks like it should. And if it's a new consultant or advisor, they're literally paying by the hour to re-explain your entire business before they can say one useful thing. That re-explaining tax is enormous. And almost nobody accounts for it when they're deciding whether to reach out for support. It's not just annoying, it's the actual reason so many founders quietly stop reaching out at all. Not because they don't want support, but because the cost of getting to the support, all that setup, all that context building, is just higher than the cost of carrying themselves one more time. And here's a trap inside of that. The more successful you get, the more complex your context is, which means the re-explaining tax goes up every single year. So the very people who most needed a surrounding board are the ones for whom getting one has become the most expensive. I want to walk you through the things the founders typically reach for when this feels like things are waning, because I've reached for most of these myself and I want to be honest about why each one falls short. The first thing people reach for is another book or framework. There is nothing wrong with books. I read plenty of them, but a book can't ask you a follow-up question. It can't say, wait, that is not actually what you told me 3 months ago. What changed? And a framework gives you language for a problem. It doesn't carry any of the weight of the problem itself. The second thing people reach for is a mastermind or a paid community. This one's closer, and for some people, it genuinely helps. It helped a ton for me. But I want to be honest about the limitations because nobody talks about it. Most masterminds are built around a cohort that started together and has to reorient every time the group shifts. You're often performing a version of yourself for people who are also performing a version of themselves. Because everyone in the room is at a similar stage and a little bit aware that everyone else is sizing them up. That is not always true, but I think it's true often enough that I think it's worth us talking about it. This episode is brought to you by my one-on-one Freedom First Leadership Coaching. This is for founders who are still the glue in their company and want to become the calm, precise CEO. Together, we will redesign your role, install clean decision rights, and delegate outcomes with a clear definition of done. You'll leave with a weekly operating cadence, a 90-day plan, and the confidence to scale without being on call to everything. If you want high standards at a human pace, apply now at accidentalceo.co/coaching. That's accidentalceo.co/coaching. The third thing people reach for is new advisors or consultants, someone who's supposedly further ahead. And the problem here is that the one I just described earlier. You're starting that relationship from zero. Even a brilliant advisor needs months to actually understand your business well enough to be useful beyond generic advice. And a lot of founders give up before the runway gets covered because the early conversation feels so surface level that it doesn't seem worth the spend. The fourth thing people reach for, and this one is newer, it's AI. And I actually think this is closer to the right instinct than people give it credit for. But most founders are doing it in a way that recreates that exact same re-explaining task. They open a blank chat, explain their business from scratch, and get a generic answer, and conclude that AI doesn't really understand their situation, which is true. It doesn't, because nobody gave it context. So here's the actual point underneath all four of those examples. Every one of those fixes fails for the same root reason. They all require you to rebuild context from zero before you can get the part that actually helps. The book never had your context. The mastermind has to build it slowly across a group. The advisor has to build it slowly with just you. And most AI tools get reset to zero every single time you open them. The actual fix isn't a tactic at all. The fix is reducing how much context rebuilding stands between you and getting real help, no matter what form that help takes. I want to give you a clear picture of what the other side of this looks like, because it's easy to describe the problem and harder to describe the solution in a way that feels real instead of theoretical. The conversations that actually move something forward for me are never with someone who needs the full backstory first. They're with someone who already knows my business, my story, my patterns, the specific way I tend to talk myself into staying too long in something that isn't working. With that person, I skip straight to the real conversation. There's no tool booth at the front of it. I can start mid-thought and they're already with me. That's true of a small handful of people in my life, and it also became true of systems I've built. I spent the last year building AI systems inside of my own business that actually hold my context, my brand voice, my offers, the way I think through a client problem, so that when I need to think something through quickly, I'm not starting from a blank page every time. The relief of that is hard to overstate once you've felt it, because the same relief of talking to someone who already gets it. The toll booth is gone. That's actually the same root problem I talk about constantly when it comes to delegation inside of your business. And I think it's worth connecting the two directly here, because they're the same wound showing up in two different parts of your life. You don't delegate well when every task requires you to fully explain it from scratch to whoever's picking it up. That is not delegation. That is just outsourcing, re-explaining, and exhausting in a different way than doing a task yourself. Sometimes it's worse because now you're managing someone else's confusion on top of your own workload. Real delegation only works when the person on the other end really has enough context that you can hand them the thing and trust that they will run with it without a full briefing every time. Support works the exact same way. A board of advisors that need full quarterly briefing before they can say anything useful is an actual support. It's another obligation wearing a helpful costume. The relationship and the system that genuinely carry weight for you are the ones that already know enough about you that you can skip the front and go entirely straight into what matters. So if you're listening to this and you recognize that feeling, the constantly surrounded, still completely alone with the hard suffering feeling, I want to give you something more useful than go find a mastermind, because that advice is everywhere and is not wrong. It's just a little incomplete and it doesn't tell you what to actually look for. The real question is this: who or what already has enough context on my business that I don't have to rebuild the foundation every single time I need to think something through? For some of you, that's a peer group of other founders who have actually been where you've been. Not people performing confidence on a stage, but people who actually say, I don't know if this is going to work either, without flinching, and who've put enough time with you that the backstory is already understood. For some of you, it's a coach who has worked with you long enough that you can start a sentence in the middle and then already know where it's going, where the history lives, where you've tried last time, and why it didn't stick. For some of you, increasingly, is the systems and tools that you deliberately built around yourself that hold the context so you're not the only place it lives. That last one matters more than people give it credit for, and I don't think it's a small thing. If the only place your business context is inside of your own head, you are at the single point of failure for every decision, every piece of content, every client interaction, every moment where someone needs an answer and you happen to be unreachable. That's not resilience. That's fragility wearing a confidence outfit. And I want to be precise about something here because I don't want this to land as a just go hire a coach or just go build some AI tool, as if either one is a magical fix on its own. The actual shift is in how you evaluate any support you're considering, human or otherwise. Before you bring someone or something into the business to help carry this weight, ask how much context building stands between you and the real conversation. If the answer is a lot every single time, that relationship or tool is going to quietly drain you even while it's technically helping you. If the answer is less and less over time, that's the kind of support actually worth investing in. So I want to leave you with this. The next time you feel that particular kind of tired, the surrounded by people but carrying it completely alone kind, don't reach for one more tactic. Don't go buy another course or download another framework. Ask yourself who or what already knows enough about your actual business that you could hand them the real problem without spending 20 minutes on setup first. If the honest answer now is nobody or nothing, that is not a character problem. It's not a sign that you've done something wrong. That is just information. And it's the next thing worth building. The same way you've built any other piece of infrastructure in your business that is missing. You wouldn't shame yourself for not having a CRM yet. This is no different. It's just less visible, so it gets ignored longer. And if this landed for you, I want to hear which part of hit harder. Send me a message and tell me what you're carrying right now that you haven't said it out loud to anyone yet. Because I promise you it's more common than it feels at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. And if you want support building the kind of context reach system and relationships I've been talking about today, that is exactly what I do inside of my coaching work. Links are in the show notes. We'll see you in the next episode. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nata Salvatori, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.